pop-up museum.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting. It's very interesting to have your own art gallery or whatever it is. I can't really get over the fact that, like, looking at it from the street, like, I just see there's just this building right now devoted to my band. It's an interesting feeling. Honestly, it's something that we've toyed around with for a long time. We made the movie, and obviously the record, and the record is based kind of off the concept of this story that we wrote. And there's a lot of pieces that went into it that not a lot of fans get to see, and a lot of that is artwork and stories and things that were developed from a year and a half ago that we didn't have the opportunity to put on the record or put in the movie, and it just seemed like it was an opportunity to have everyone come and see, in real life, the artwork, the pieces, the story pieces that went into it, a lot of the stuff that kind of helps tell the story a little bit more, because you're confined when you make an album, or, particularly with us, we made a 45-minute movie out of it, there's only so much that you can do. So this is kind of an opportunity in lieu of doing a follow-up or a sequel or whatever. It's a chance for people to come and actually see every piece and stuff, not only what was on the record and what's in the movie, but stuff that we intended to do, stuff that had budget allowed or time allowed, these characters and these creations and this artwork that was based around this whole concept. Usually, I would say that, with most things that happen on, I guess, the genesis of stuff, it's Patrick Fogarty, Richard Villa, and I that kind of come up with the vast majority of the concepts that lead towards the artistic end of, like, music videos and that kind of stuff. So we've worked together since right down there at 1086, a couple doors down in the back lot used to be the Alva shop, and that's where we played our first show in Los Angeles. We couldn't get a show anywhere, and Richard, who runs this gallery, and Tony used to work together in the Alva shop, and we couldn't get a show at the Roxy or Whiskey or wherever, Viper Room, and so basically they said, hey, if you can't get a show at a venue, we'll build one for you, because they believed in the band so much. So they built a stage in the back, we played back there, and it became my second home. At the time I was living in my car, like I was living in North Hollywood in the Kmart parking lot in my car. So I would come here, or rather down there, and we would just talk about things, and we would talk about art and music and the juxtaposition of Metallica versus, Baroque style Renaissance art and how things kind of affect each other. And in those early days, that's when we really started the idea of working towards having a visual medium that matches the lyrical content, more so than just the band being theatrical, having something that really held strong behind it. So for as long as I can remember in the course of the band, we've been talking about doing this kind of stuff. So through the years, I would draw little things and give them to Richard and Patrick, and they would do the same and give them to me, and we would always just meet here. And over time, we amassed a large collection of that stuff. And as records go on and as artwork is made for albums and stuff, you start to see that there's a large amount of stuff that has been made that isn't necessarily used for a major label release or something. So we always kind of use it as a reference point, and what's in there right now is primarily pieces that were either used in music videos or in the movie or whatever, but also a lot of stuff that was just concept art, stuff that we used as a jumping off point, paintings that were done by Richard, sketches that were done by myself, even like down to costume pieces and designing vests and clothes and stuff. So this is kind of an opportunity to showcase all of the things over the last half a decade that have been made by the three of us on the outside of the band. Because once it kind of enters Black Veil Bride's world, that's when the four other members of the band really get involved, and we really start to shape the vision of what the record's going to be and what the songs are. So honestly, if you walk through there, it's kind of like a time capsule. Well, I moved to LA when I was like 17, and I sort of moved under the naive notion that, like when you go out to Hollywood, you're going to make it and everything. By the same token, I had the abiding belief that I knew I had to work hard. So I had like $200 that I had saved or something. And I moved out here and I was just in my car. And for a long time, I dated around girls who had homes and I could sleep on their couches and stuff. And I met Richard, and through the course of my sort of being this 17-year-old like rocker who's going to make it, I met this guy who, he and Tony Alva ran this now empty gallery space, and it became my home. For someone who didn't have a stable home out here and is trying so hard to achieve a dream, to meet someone who's a kindred spirit artistically, and someone who, you know, when you have no money to get lunch, is willing to go get you a piece of pizza at 7-Eleven across the street. It's really important, you know. And so he and I became so close that I spent every day here. And from the time I was that age to now, you know, I've had every major birthday party I've had here. I've had breakups here. I've had every major event of my life happened in this little, you know, art gallery, which was, you know, skate shop, art gallery, everything else. And our first show I ever played in Los Angeles, the first time Black Veil Brides ever performed in Los Angeles, was the parking lot of this place. So the significance that this street or this block has to me is, you know, it's paramount to who I am as a person now. And as I was telling you before, it's just, I have an overwhelming sort of rush of emotion being in this situation where we're not playing a rock show right now. You know, we're not going up there and plugging in our guitars and playing, you know, Fallen Angels or whatever. People, you know, we're literally just putting a bunch of pieces of ourselves on display, art and things that we've worked on as a band, and me and my friends have worked on for a long time, and people are coming to see it, and that's something that's worth, you know, however many people are here right now. There's a line down the block when we first got here, and it was just like, it was overwhelming. It was really important to me because I can remember it wasn't that long ago that I was coming here looking at my gas meter, not knowing if I was going to make it all the way here, you know what I'm saying? And I always told Richard, and I told Tony, and I told Patrick, and all these people that Black Veil Brides was going to be something significant, not just on the level of we're going to be this band that, you know, parties and is big and has groupies or whatever, but that it was going to mean something significant, that I was going to do something that I felt was important. And to know that we don't need to sing these songs and do this stuff, and yet people still connect with something on an artistic level or on a, I guess, a more romanticized level. It's hugely important to me. As I said to you, obviously Black Veil Brides is a very polarizing set of 3 words. You know, if you put it anywhere on the internet, it tends to explode. So it's also the same in different walks of life and different people. I've done a considerable number of pieces for shows that have happened here that were not Black Veil Bride shows, and it's always interesting to see the reaction of people that don't necessarily know a lot about the band, that are seeing my art and going, oh, that's by that guy in that, you know, whatever band that wears makeup, and what, you know, I read that they're fags or whatever else. Right. So that crossover has been interesting, and I've met a significant number of people that are now influential in my life and that were idols of mine. People like Keith Morris from Circle Jerks, who, you know, I would listen to the records endlessly when I was a kid. I've met and done art with and DJ'd with and all these things because of this space. And Howie Pyro, who's in Danzig, and all these people who, really important people that in my adolescence that I've met not through necessarily being in Black Veil Brides, but being the artistic person that I am, or whatever you want to call it. I've gotten a chance, because of, I guess, the profile that we've amassed, to meet these people and to make lifelong friends. And that's really cool, because, you know, you don't really get that opportunity in a lot of walks of life. It's something that I'm very fortunate to have. I have the cachet to meet people that I would want to meet, you know. And I guess if I can walk away with anything from, you know, I'm 22 years old and I have this thing that I have, but the most important thing is the lasting effect that it'll have on me in terms of longevity, just for my own life, as opposed to a career-based idea. Because careers are fleeting, you know. People, something's popular for a minute, then it's not. I've given myself the opportunity for the work that I've done and the people that I've met, like, you know, the people that were in this fucking room, to have a chance at a life full of art and rock and roll and those things. I want to believe that what I'm doing is important, because if I don't believe it, nobody else will. And that goes back to every garage band I was in and everything I did leading up to this point. I was always told that I was wrong. And oftentimes, you know, I'm sure when this interview is posted, there'll be plenty of people that talk about how big of a fag I am and how terrible the band is. But that has never necessarily mattered to me, because the most important thing has always been that I'm doing something that's genuine to myself. And so I want things to last forever, don't get me wrong. I want to be able to say that I've made a life out of this. But I'm also very young, and I have the understanding that it wasn't that long ago that I was counting pennies to be able to get lunch. So to somehow now feel, because I make a little bit of money, that I'm the best thing since sliced bread and that I'm on top of every possible woe that affects people in life is illogical. I know that it's possible that things could crash and burn tomorrow, but as long as I know what I'm doing is, I guess, is genuine or real in some sense. And I hate to use that word because I hate when people pontificate on the idea of being real or being an artist, because it's...
I know what you mean, though. But as long as there's an authenticity in the intention, I think, is what supersedes that faux idea of real.
Absolutely. The positive thing about music is that, unlike any other art form, you can always evolve and change. And if you paint something, it's that painting forever. If you make a record, if you listen to it, it's always going to be the same, but you can play it live a million different ways, and you can fit it. You know, we can play songs from our first record and make them sound as if they were made today, because that's just the nature of the art form. So who knows what future mediums we'd get into? I don't really know. I know that I'd like to think that in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, people are going to give a shit enough to want to see something from us. And that's, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, is the idea that I don't make any bones about the idea of being a role model or being someone of significance to the end of being better than someone. But I do take a large amount of responsibility for being someone that takes the consideration of the fans in and writes with the idea that I'm going to do something that means something to people.
Well, we just heard somebody walk up and tell you that someone stopped cutting themselves because of one of your songs. It's definitely a responsibility.
And my response is always the same. I don't write for that. I've never sat down and said, this is the song that's going to stop the cutters, because that's disingenuous, and I've never myself been affected by self-harm. But I get it. You know, I understand the idea of feeling something so passionately that you feel a need to release it in some way. Mine's always just been an art thing. You know, I've always taken the negatives in my life and tried to put a spin on them and use them for my own gain in a way. You know, it's sort of weird to manufacture a career or a lifestyle wherein I'm getting paid to air my shit. You know, it's one thing that is distinctively different about this career path than anything else, is that I get to use exactly what was thrown at me and dress it up differently and give it to the world and say, here's what I was affected by. How can this affect you? You know, and that's, at the risk of sounding too pretentious or too into myself, it really does feel that way, and it's a nice feeling.
You mentioned Warped Tour obviously is about to start. What can you tell us about, I mean, I'm sure we'll see you out there, we're going to be out covering it, of course, but what can you tell us about what you plan to do and anything different about your performance, anything, you know, obviously you've done Warped before, so what's going to... Yeah,
Warped Tour is an interesting tour because, you know, for a band like ours, we don't necessarily fit into a lot of the kind of the summer camp aspect. We're sort of the lone wolf in a large way. Because of that, the first time we did it, we kind of, I guess we had a bit of a chip on our shoulder, you know, and admittedly so. We were kind of the bad kids at school, you know, getting reprimanded and everything else. And because of that, I was able to develop a really close relationship with Kevin Lyman and all the people that work at Warped Tour. And I now think that going into this next one, it's like we've grown up. We're very close with the people at the tour, and I'm just going to go out there, and I think our intention as a band is just to go out and have fun and to let some of the angst that we inherently feel come through more in the music than in our own, you know, because you grow up over time. It's not like you always want to be the guy who's... I know that I'll always have that rebellious streak in me, but I also want to have fun, and sometimes, you know, what is it, what did they say? Would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And sometimes when I see a band talking shit about us in press or something, the urge to go up to them and say something, you know, especially in a Warped Tour setting where everybody's around, and I go, that band right there, I know what they said about me, I'm going to march over there. Sometimes I'd rather, I guess now, enjoy my time in a band and playing music as opposed to, being a fight starter, but you know, I'm scrappy. Maybe there might be a few. I just gotta set a few people straight. That's it.
Yeah, it's funny that old cliche about it's better to be happy than right. It's good relationship advice too.
Absolutely. Well, you know, honestly, I will say this: we're fortunate that we're even allowed onto the tour, just because obviously stylistically we're very different from a lot of the bands, and we feel like we're in a situation where we've been given a gift and a chance to be one of the headlining bands on the tour, and that's a huge honor. I'm not going to fuck that up, and we're not going to fuck that up. We're going to go out and give our best show every single day, and give our fans the best, 35 to 40 minutes, whatever the set time is, that we can, every single day. And that is, if I can say that there's one focus going into Warped Tour, it's being the best Black Veil Brides that the fans deserve. think that the undertone of the album is sort of, I grew up in Catholicism, and I'm not anti-religious by any means. I understand the need for it. I understand the idea of faith and hope, and without faith or hope, there is no tomorrow. We all go to bed and we make plans. You're going to tell me that you're going to go in there and film that, right? You're living under the faith and hope that you're not going to get shanked on the way in there. So you're putting a certain amount of faith in the next minute, and the next day, and the next life, you know. So I understand that need, but the downside of that is the level of exclusion that's always existed inherently in religion, and it's always been difficult for me to come to terms with the idea that there are certain people that aren't allowed because of who they love or how they look or whatever. So a lot of the themes in this album are based on both political and religious oppression, not the positive sides of those, but the negative sides, the things that I experienced growing up in religion and seeing that, well, why is my one friend not allowed to do this, or why is, you know, a woman not allowed to do, you know, these things that you sort of notice as you grow or as you start to get some sort of insight. I think, what did George Carlin say? He was Catholic until the age of reason. And I get that. I mean, and this is not, I'm not dogging because my family is still, you know, devout religious, but a lot of the pieces that you'll see in there are meant to be reference points of both political and religious things that have existed throughout time. You have the hoods that are references, obviously, to the Ku Klux Klan and stuff, and those are pieces that were used in the movie as the fear images. A lot of the symbolism and stuff is used in reference to a lot of sort of, I guess, look at it as if you were looking at the Inquisition in the future, the idea that you've taken something like the Spanish Inquisition and you've put it into a more dystopian world. A lot of those costumes and things are meant to be kind of reference points for the idea that sometimes if something amasses too much power, it forgets the people. And the people, regardless of whether it's in a political movement, a religious movement, a musical movement, the people's voice should speak the loudest. And we have always been a band of the people. Critics, radio, all these people can give a fuck about us. It's never been anything more worth it.
Revolver Magazine Awards, for example.
Yes.
That was a fan-voted award.
Exactly.
Though.
We're not the darlings of that world. But the people have spoken loudly, and they've said that they want to buy our records, they want to come to our shows. So we've always tried to be the voice of our you know, our fan base or our people. And so a lot of the pieces that you'll see in there are meant to be kind of, I guess, caricaturized or cartoonized versions of kind of these oppressive regimes over time. There's also a lot of stuff from our various albums, a lot of artwork that it's both album covers and stuff, as well as extra art that you don't necessarily see represented in everything. Detailed work that exists. You know, obviously our first record cover is a photo of me stitching up my face. Yes, obviously there's one side of that which is sort of the angelic, sort of you know, younger kind of androgynous face, but it's also got a huge gaping hole in it that's being sewed shut. The idea there that inherently we all have scars. You go through life, you try to build on your scars, and we've always preached the idea or said the idea of wearing those scars proudly. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to choose any kind of piece in there that would be specific because it's all, in a way, it's all fragmented parts of who I am as Andy Biersack at 22.
What's up, guys?